So good morning once again, everyone. Am I audible, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
So in the last lecture, it was just an introductory lecture where I have just told you the basic things about OOPS. Today we will start with the actual topic of how exactly OOPS and your C language are different and how these OOPS languages will help you out. We will be discussing the different concepts that we have in this as well as the different characteristics of your OOPS language. Now first, when you are talking about C language is called as your procedural language. Now, I have informed you in the last lecture that why it is called as procedural language, because in one function you write everything. मतलब main के अंदर ही you are writing everything. You are creating your functions. You are calling your functions. Whatever operation that you wanted to perform, everything you are doing it inside one. And there is a particular process you have. Like first you will be creating. First, you will be writing that main function in which you will be what you can say, you will be inside which you will be first declaring the variables, then you are assigning some values to that particular variables, then you will be doing something with respect to that variables, and then a particular operation you are performing, and then you are displaying the result. So this is a procedure which is followed for a particular language, and that's why these kind of languages are called as your procedural language. Whereas now when you're talking about object oriented language, it's not a procedural language, it is object oriented. Now why it is called as object oriented and how it has become object oriented, that we will see. There are certain drawbacks you have with respect to C language, which is your procedural language. Like if suppose now you have written a code, suppose it is told to you to write the code to perform the addition of 10 numbers, where the 10 numbers you are taking it from the user and then you are performing the addition. So as I have told you, you will be following a basic procedure. You will be following a basic procedure where you will be declaring the variables, and then you will be asking user to enter the values for the 10 variables, and then you will be performing the addition. At any particular time, if suppose you have entered the wrong value, or if there is any mistake you have in your program, your whole program will stop its execution, right? It will not reach to that level of the code. Why? Because there is an error or there is some kind of syntactical or logical error in your program and you will not be able to execute it. So that should not happen every time. Somewhere if you can manage with the errors, or somewhere where you can create a separate module or create a separate thing for that particular code, where you can test whether that particular code is correct or not, and then only you will be proceeding to that particular code, or you will jump into the next segment. That kind of a things can be done in the programming. So when you're talking about object oriented programming will help you out to do certain such kind of a things. Okay, then if you are talking about like what we can say, let me just show you. Before learning your C++ language, you should be familiar with C, which you are already. At least you have some idea about your C language, how you are writing the programs and all that you are aware about. What is the program design that you used for this particular C language? So we are using a procedural design, where your functions are defined, and then with respect to functions you are writing a particular operation, and then it is getting executed. Now, whatever the drawbacks you have in this kind of the conventional programming languages or in procedural languages, to overcome that we have used the OOPS. which was, now what is this OOPS is doing? OOPS is allowing us to divide a problem into number of entities, and that entities are called as objects. Like suppose it is told you that design or create design one software for your college, where your college admission process has to be handled, the result generating the result of the student also has to be handled, and the salaries of the teacher also has to be handled. If I am telling you to write a program for this in C, what all you need to do for this? If you are writing a program in C, suppose just think that it is told to you to write a program to which will be able to do the admission of one particular student in your college. How you'll write a C program for this? Can anybody will tell me about this? Yes, students. Yes, anyone? Yes, no one. If I am telling you to do the admission करने के लिए तुम्हें क्या क्या करना पड़ता है? What is the procedure? If you wanted to take the admission, क्या क्या किया तुम लोगों ने to take the admission in SIS?
पहले गए कॉलेज जाके पूछा एडमिशन ओपन कभी होगा। उसके बाद उन्होंने 2-3 राउंड घुमाया, फिर डॉक्यूमेंट्स देने पड़े। फिर
First you might have filled the form.
हाँ मैम, मुंबई यूनिवर्सिटी का फॉर्म।
You have filled university enrollment form. You have filled SIS का भी form. Yes or no?
Yes ma'am.
Then after that, what happens? That forms are processed at the college level. Then your means your details will be checked, and then if suppose you are coming into the criteria, your documents are asked. Means the college has asked for your documents, right? Where you have submitted your 12th mark sheet, your living LC, and all the documents. And then if suppose your means before that the merit list is being generated, and if your name is there in the merit list, your documents are asked, and once you have submitted your documents and paid the fees, your admission is confirmed. This is what the basic procedure you have for doing admission. Now this procedure I have to follow for all the students who wanted to seek the admission in the college. Yes or no?
Yes ma'am.
So will I be writing a separate program for every student who is applying for this particular college and wanted to take the admission?
No ma'am.
No, it's not feasible. It's not feasible, as well as it's not at all of good programming practice where you will be writing a separate program for each user. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to make one generic program which will be useful for all the students who wanted to seek the admission or who wanted to apply for this particular college. Okay, now when I am writing a program, for that also, first of all, अभी वो भूल जाओ, वो फॉर्म रजिस्ट्रेशन वो सब हम लोग भूल जाते हैं. लाइक ए बेसिक प्रोसीजर है वेर यू हैव टू एंटर, सपोज यू हैव टू एंटर योर 12th marks and you have to enter your maths का marks. These two fields you have to enter, and then if suppose depending upon how much marks you have, your admission is being confirmed. अभी अब ये suppose ये simple program मैंने बोला तुम लोग को करने के लिए. Like you will be asking a user to enter his 12th marks and his maths marks, and based on that, if suppose I'm deciding whether you will come into the, whether your name comes into the merit list, and then of course suppose your admission happen. Now, along with your maths marks and your 12th marks, what all details I need of a particular student or the student who applies? What all details I'll be taking?
Address, contact number.
First of all, his name, his address, his
Ma'am,
contact details, maybe his documents like Aadhaar number and all, right? I need all these details for all the students, right? So, and I don't know how many students will be applying, right? So I cannot go on creating the variables also. I need a particular variable where I'll be able to store all these details of a student, right? Where I'll be asking him to enter his name, I'll be asking him to enter his address, I'll be asking him to enter his contact number, and then I'll be asking him to enter his 12th marks and maths ka marks. Am I correct? Yes, students?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after doing this, suppose now I have created the application or I have created the software which asks for all these details. Okay. So suppose now abhi ek koi to usernames, one of you have entered all these details. Now once you have entered the details, I have to fetch the details, I have to get that particular details. That means I have to store the details somewhere in a particular format. And then I have to apply some filter on it with which it will get sorted with respect to the highest marks, and then it should be easier for me to generate the list and again to display that particular list so that only that students can apply for the admission. So when we are doing this, this is a generic, we need to create one generic program for this. If suppose we are writing a C program for this, your program will become too lengthy and then it will be very difficult to execute it as well as to process this kind of a programs. Right? So this gave an idea to create a certain a different perspective than your procedural language, and that is what called as your programming language, which is called as which is based on a certain objects, and that's why this particular language is called as object oriented programming language. Are you getting, students? It is called as object oriented programming language because what I will be doing, I will be creating a separate objects. What is this objects? Object means what? Entity. Any entity. Entity matlab kya hai? जो भी है living thing है. I can call any kind of a living thing as an entity. Not only living, a non-living thing also. Like when I'm talking about a car also have its own properties. Abhi suppose if anybody is telling you to write the working of the car. Now every car will have different features, every car will have different properties in it, and with respect to that its functioning will also be different. Yes or no? So what I can do, I can create or I can consider car as a separate object or a separate entity which is having its own properties. तो प्रॉपर्टीज में क्या क्या आएगा और एट्रीब्यूट्स में उसका क्या क्या आएगा, उसका कलर आएगा, व्हाट इज द कलर ऑफ द कार, व्हाट टाइप ऑफ इंजन दैट कार इज हैविंग, okay, where the steering is placed in that particular car, whether it is towards the left side or towards the right side, how many seats are there, means that car is a 4-seater or 3-seater, what kind of car it is, like this will be called as the properties. Then the actual function of the car is what? Means what kind of, means how that engine actually works, or what are the other features that you have in that particular car with respect to which that car works. So like that I can divide or I can consider the different objects, and with respect to that objects I can divide my problem into that objects, and then writing a program with respect to that objects becomes much more simpler. अभी जैसे मैंने बोला, suppose you are writing, another example is you are writing, suppose you wanted to create a software for a college, but college needs the software for the admission process of the students, for the result generation of the students, as well as for the what you can say, the salary generation of all the employees working in that particular college. Okay, now this will be 3 different things you have. Result and admission same process hai kya? Will it be having the same process? Yes, students. Result and admission, is it the same thing?
No, ma'am, different.
Huh?
Different, ma'am. Same thing
Different.
नहीं होगा, ma'am.
दो स्टूडेंट सेम रहेगा बट एडमिशन के लिए यू हैव अ सेपरेट प्रोसीजर, रिजल्ट के लिए सेपरेट प्रोसीजर है. रिजल्ट के लिए फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल दैट स्टूडेंट हैज टू गिव सर्टेन एग्जाम्स एंड देन the marks of that exams will be generated, which based on that the result will be calculated. Based on the marks he has secured in that particular semester, the result will be generated. Okay, so for result generation you have a different procedure, and similarly for generating the pay slips or the salary slips of the employees of that SIS college, you have, there will be a separate procedure we have. But I am creating one generic software which is useful for SIS college, right? But then if I am writing it in one single program, my program will become too lengthy. तो मैंने क्या किया, मैंने उसको डिवाइड किया ऑब्जेक्ट्स में. What all my objects in this case? First object will be my student and his admission procedure. Student and उसका property क्या क्या function लिखना है वो student के लिए, उसका admission is the function. Okay. Second object is again another means again a student, but here that student will be working on the function of generating the result. That student ka details will help you out to generate the result of that particular student. And third, you have the employees of that particular organization or that college. So this, what I am doing, I am dividing it into the different modules, or I am dividing it into the different entities or the objects with which it becomes easier for me to write the program. Okay. Are you getting, students?
Yes, ma'am.
So the idea of is the PPT visible, students?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So the idea of your object-oriented programming is to model the features. How you can model the features, that is what the properties or the attributes and behavior of real-world objects in the problem domain by software objects. That is what called as instances. Matlab, how you can put this particular thing into the real world, whatever the objects you are talking about. Abhi, when I am talking about the student, एवरी टाइम स्टूडेंट का सिर्फ एडमिशन ही प्रोसीजर, एडमिशन ही टास्क नहीं रहेगा ना. Like suppose that student is doing different courses and I wanted to give him some extra credits. So I may write a program for this particular thing also. Or that particular student is very good in sports activities, or he is there in NCC or NSS activities, and then based on that I wanted to give him some credits, or some criterias are being are created where this kind of things also has to be modeled. So these are the different attributes that you have with respect to a student. So if I am writing a program, I should write a program with respect to a particular object, and I should be able to identify the different properties and the attributes of that particular object, so that it becomes easier for me to write the program. When I will show you the program, it becomes it will be a little bit more easier for you to understand. Now just understand the concept. Ye first, as I said, first unit is all about the conceptual things that you have with OOPS. Okay, so actually you are making use of a class. Now what is this class, that I will tell you in detail afterwards, but just understand that what you will be doing to make it more simpler. ये जो भी objects अभी मैंने बोला, you will be making use of objects, but you will be making use of that object in one particular class. So why? Because the class construct will provide you a template, or which is called as a blueprint for the creation of your objects. Like suppose what I said, you wanted to create or you wanted to develop the software for SIS college, where you'll be having different modules. So what I can do, I can create one class where I can one class called as SIS, for which I have a separate method for admission procedure. I have a separate method for result generation. I have a separate method for employees salary generation, salary slip generation. Okay, but since they are working, or they are the part of one particular entity, which you can call it as a class. So class is nothing but what? The collection of different objects that you have or which you wanted to create, and studying of that objects and their properties in detail is given inside the class. So actually your class specifies what attributes and behavior an object may have. So you can create many objects from a given class, like each object will have its own attributes but will have a identical behavior. Now, these are the important concepts you have in object-oriented programming, and these concepts, or you can call it as a characteristics of, you can also call it as a characteristics of object-oriented programming. Whenever you are writing any program, or here afterwards also, whatever the programs we will write, we will make sure that these programs will have at least some of these properties in it, or some of these characteristics will be there in that program. Because your object oriented programs are developed in such a way that whichever program we will write, it will have all these concepts or it will have all these characteristics. Why? Because that gives some kind of the extra functionality to your program. Like as you can see in that particular slide, the first characteristic that you have means it is not given with in a particular sequence. Actually, the first characteristic that you have is about the classes and object. How you will create the class concept and the object in your program. See, like here, you can take the example of a car. Don't read everything whatever is given in the slide. I'll just explain you with respect to the concept you have. The first concept of your object-oriented programming you should be able to identify whatever the real-time situation is given to you. You should be able to identify how many objects are there in that particular situation or in that particular problem, and whether you can create a particular class for handling that objects. Like if suppose I have this car, so I have a car now, or what I can do now, car is a specific type of a vehicle. If I am talking about a vehicle, there will be different types of vehicles you have, right? So I may talk about car, I may talk about jeep, I may talk about trucks, I may talk about cycles, bicycles, whatever it is, or motorcycles. All these are belonging to your vehicle type. Yes, students.
Yes, ma'am.
I want the replies from maximum students. It should not be like only one student always giving a reply. So what I want, I am talking about the different types of a vehicle, and each vehicle will have its own properties. Yes, student.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Yes, ma'am.
what I can do in this case, I can create one class called as car. I can create one class called as car. I can create one class called as vehicle. And in that vehicle, then I can create a separate object for car. I can create a separate object for truck. I can create a separate object for bus. I can create a separate object for motorcycle, like that. Now, why I have to create a separate object for car and bus? Because bus is having different properties. Car is having different properties. Yes or no? Maybe I may have a car which is working on a petrol, or which is having a petrol, which is based on the petrol, and bus normally works on a diesel. Yes or no? And
Yes, ma'am.
there will be certain other features that you have. So what happens, it becomes easier for you to identify what kind of object it is, and then to identify with respect to that object uska behavior kaise change hota hai. Like car ka behavior will be different than your bus. Bus ka behavior will be different than the truck. Truck ka behavior will be different than the motorcycle. So they are not related to each other, but all of them are type of a vehicle. So I can create one generic class which is called as a vehicle, and inside that I can have the objects of each one of this type. So when I'm talking about a car, it can be any car, but car may also you have different types. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Or bus may also you have a different types. You have a minibus, you have normal bus, or any other kind of a type that you have, or car may be whatever the types you have, 7-seater, 4-seater, or with respect to the engine type, that car may differ, whatever it is. So what you can do, once if I'll define the object as car, I can have any number of car with respect to that object, or I can create any number of objects of that particular car. So it becomes easier for me to write the different functionalities of each type of a car. Okay, see, so the car dealer views a car from selling features standpoint, or what is the purpose of the seller is to talk about all these properties with respect to the price, with respect to the length of warranty, and with respect to the color or the other features like engine guarantee and all. The car dealer will be talking about all that perspective. But if you're talking about the mechanical view, mechanic views a car from systems maintenance standpoint, like size of the oil filter, type of spark plugs, and the other details whatever are needed. So requirements may be different with respect to what kind of a person it is, but when you're talking about one particular object, there are various properties you have with that object. Sorry. Now, for another example, I'll give you. So the first concept that you have is about the classes and objects. So I am giving you the different examples of classes and objects. Suppose I am talking about a student. When you are talking about a student, students may have, every student is not similar. They have different characteristics. Maybe some of the students will be very good in art and craft. Some of the students will be very good in dancing. Some of the students are very good in singing. These are the extra characteristics they have other than the studies, right? But when I am talking about the student, the basic things that I need about every student is I wanted to know the name and roll number of the student. Are you getting? Which will be unique with respect to every student. Maybe name may maybe you may have repeatable names, but roll number will be unique one for every student. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So what I can do, I can create object also as a student, and then for every student, like S1 means student 1. For that I will have his roll number and name. For S2 means another object for which I will have his name and roll number. For S3 will be the another student for which I will have his name and roll number. Like that I can create an object. Okay. Now I may talk about, now a student is also a person. Yes or no? A student is or a person can be a student, can be a worker, can be or what else you can do, or can be a teacher or whatever it is. So what I can do, if I have all these categories, then I can create only one generic class as a person, and then in that class person I can create the object of this person in such a way that one particular object of a person representing all the teachers, one particular class of a person representing all the students, and one particular class of a student one particular object of a person representing all the workers. That way also I can do it. So when you are using class object kind of a concept, it becomes easier for you to identify a particular object and the properties or the attributes related to that object. Is this clear to everyone? Yes, students?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Or another example, you can take it as about the fruits. If I am talking about the fruits, I can create a class as a fruit. But there will be a variety of fruits you have. Right? You have mangoes, you have apples, you have bananas or cherries or whatever it is. Right. Now mangoes will have different properties, apples will have different properties, bananas will have different property. But when I wanted to talk in general, I will create a generic class called as fruits. Okay. Now the next important concept you have is about the abstraction. Now this abstraction feature was not there in your C language. Abstraction means what? It extracts only the relevant properties of the real world, which are useful for developing a class while ignoring the inessential things. Means what? What it is saying? Like when you're creating an object, like suppose I have created student as one of the object of a class person. When I am talking about this object, I am just interested. If suppose that person is a student, the student matlab I am interested for his name and roll number only. I don't want any other details like how much salary he is getting, because as a student he will not get a salary. Means if he is not a working student, he will not get any salary. So if that object is a kind of a student, or you are representing it as a student, then I will be looking into the properties which are related to a student. I am not interested for other things or the other details that I have for a student. For a student, for generating the result, address is of no use. For that particular point, for generating a result, address you don't need. What you need the marks of the different subjects of that particular student. See what I was saying? When we are suppose I have written a class as a person, and in that person class I have a object as a student. So when I am talking of that person, and when I am looking into that person perspective, from the perspective of a student, I will be interested into the details of the student as name, roll number and marks of a specific subjects. Okay. But suppose that person is an employee. If he is an employee, then I want his name, I want his department, I want his organization name, I want his basic salary details. That all details I will be requiring. So abstraction means what? Sorry. Abstraction means you will be just talking about the relevant properties of any real world object that you have, and you will ignore all the irrelevant properties or all the irrelevant information that you have with respect to that object. Clear? Clear everyone with respect to the abstraction? Abstract means a little bit information. You don't want to give all the information to everyone, right? Like suppose you are there in a class, you are there. There are 119 students you have in your class. Every student ka details I know, but what all details I know? I know every student ka, suppose now I don't know, personally I don't know all of your names, but I have a list with which I have the names of all of you and the roll number of all of you. But each one of you are aware about your own talent, what talent you have, whether you are good in singing, whether you are good in dancing, whether you are good in a particular any other crafts or anything that you will be knowing, or you will be knowing about your friends, right? But until and unless it is being asked to you, or until and unless it is necessary somewhere, you will not inform, or you will not tell us, you will not tell your teachers. So that is what kind of abstraction that you have. You are giving only the important information which is needed for us. That's the example of your abstraction. Second one you have is a encapsulation. Encapsulation is again another important concept you have, which is we are implementing in all the programs. Encapsulation and abstraction will be implementing it in all the C++ programs. Here afterwards you will write the OOPS program. What is encapsulation? In simple terms, if you wanted to remember what is encapsulation, you can remember this as encapsulation means wrapping up of your data. Wrapping matlab kya? See, normally what happens if suppose that that now new like suppose you wanted to give surprise to your you wanted to give any particular gift to your friend, and you wanted to what you wanted to do, you don't want it if suppose it is very small and you just you just wanted to make a fun of it. What you will do, you will wrap that particular small gift in so many papers, and finally you put it in one particular box. That means what? You are encapsulating it in box. Yes or no? Yes or no, students?
Yes, ma'am.
So similarly, in our this object-oriented programming also, since we have so many objects, we can create in one particular class. You can create any number of objects, or you can talk about you can talk about when you are talking about that objects. You talk about their properties and their behavior, attributes, properties, and you are talking about their behavior. So what you are doing? In one particular class, when you are writing all that objects with their attributes and behavior, that is what called as your encapsulation. मतलब एक program में एक class के अंदर तुम लोग with respect to that class whatever the objects are required, and for that objects whatever the properties and methods are required, that you are writing it inside the class. And when you are writing it inside the class, it is what called as encapsulating it in a class. Are you getting? Like suppose now I am writing a simple program of a class person. तो मैं क्या करेगी? I will write class person. Inside that class person, what I will do? I will first of all declare some variables. अभी क्या variable चाहिए? For that person, I wanted to know the name of that person. So I will create one character array, that is cat a of 30 to store the name of the person. And suppose I wanted to store his age. So I will store the age as suppose integer value. So int age I will declare. And after that I just wanted to print that person's name and age. So I need one particular, maybe I'll be writing one particular method, or I'll be simply writing the print statements to print his name and age. So that I am writing it inside the class person only. Matlab whatever the details I am printing it is related to one particular person, and the details I am printing it in that particular class. So that is what called as your encapsulation. Understood? Understood?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now next we have information hiding. Information hiding is another important concept that you have, which was not there in your C language. And that's why C was a little bit the C language was having it was one of the drawback of your C language, because see क्या होता है when you are writing one particular program, if you declare the variables, what is the scope of that variable, or what was the lifetime of that variable? Suppose main function लिखा तुम लोगों ने, inside main you have written int a. What is the scope of that int a? Yes, students. See, if suppose I have written this is my main, inside this main I have declared a variable int a. What is the scope of this variable? And then after that I have so much of, I've written certain code, I have done something with that code, and now so I'm asking what is the scope, or what is the lifetime of that a? Yes, anyone. Scope of the variable. int का एक कब तक यूज कर सकते हो तुम लोग?
जब तक वो इंटीजर है मैम.
जब तक वो
इंटीजर.
नो 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 नो. स्कोप क्या है? तुमने स्कोप तो पढ़ा रहेगा ना सी में. व्हाट इज द स्कोप ऑफ अ वेरिएबल? और
नो मैम.
scope of the variable is when I am writing main. Now inside this main function I am writing int a, right? int a जब मैं लिखती हूँ, till what time I can use this a in my program? मैं स्कोप बोल रही हूँ और आई एम टॉकिंग लाइफ टाइम ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर वेरिएबल. व्हाट इज द लाइफ टाइम ऑफ दैट वेरिएबल? लाइफ टाइम मतलब क्या है? सी, जब तुम लोग ये हैश इंक्लूड जब डायरेक्टिव्स लिखते हो, उसके बाद ये मेन फंक्शन लिखते हो, व्हेन यू आर डिक्लेयरिंग दिस वेरिएबल, मतलब क्या ये वेरिएबल के लिए मेमोरी में एक जगह अलोकेट हो जाता है,
Yes मैम.
right? And the value wherever in the program, suppose afterwards I have written a is equal to, afterwards I have written a is equal to 10. So in that memory, this value will be stored. Yes or no? Here I have just declared the variable and here I have assigned some value to that variable. So that value will be stored in the memory for this variable. And this value will be available until I have not reached to this return 0 statement and I have not closed the bracket. Suppose forget about this bracket. I have, sorry, my mouse is not working properly. I need to have a return statement. Yes. See, at the end of all your programs, you have a return 0 statement. Return 0 और get ch जो भी तुम लोगों ने सीखा है. Return 0 रहता है end में या फिर get ch. Yes or no? And then you are closing this bracket. When you are closing this bracket means what? तुम्हारा main function end हो गया. So after once you have closed this main function, all the variables for which you have allocated the memory, वो सब रिलीज हो जाएगा. दैट मीन्स until you are not reached to this, you can make use of a anywhere in your program. अगर मैंने a यहाँ पे a is equal to 10 डिक्लेयर किया, असाइन किया है, after some more variables I may again reassign it as a is equal to 5 after some more statements. So जो भी latest value उससे वो update हो जाएगा that variable. So that means a is available. The lifetime of this a is throughout the program until you are not reached to the last line of the code. Understood? Lifetime और scope क्या रहता है वो variable का? Like for how much time you can make use of that particular variable. But so you can make use of that variable throughout the program in your C language. I am talking about C language. Until you have not closed your this main function or until you have not come out of your main function. Once you have finished executing your main function, your variables will be released. Means that memory will be released. Is this clear?
Yes ma'am.
Is this clear to everyone? What is the scope of a variable?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Similarly, you have scope of the function also. Like अगर कोई एक program में I can declare a particular function. Like suppose I have written ऐसा एक main function के अंदर ही है. Suppose this is inside the main function के अंदर. Suppose here I have written one function like void display. Display के लिए suppose मैंने ऐसा करके function दिया है. And suppose inside this function, now I have written another variable as int x. And here I am closing this function. अभी ये जो x है ना, this variable, ये variable declaration, इसको हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं? int x जब हम लोग लिखते हैं with the semicolon, we are calling this as variable declaration. Variable declaration means क्या? तभी वो variable तुम लोग create कर रहे हो. तो that time memory will be allocated for that variable in the in your system. Yes or no? Right? तो अभी ये जो x है, for the scope of this x is for this function. मतलब this x will be available only to this function. When you will use this x outside, अगर सपोज मैंने यहाँ पे ये फंक्शन के बाहर x is equal to 5 लिखा ना, it will give you error as out of the scope variable. Are you getting? Are you getting, students?
Yes.
So that means when you are, or suppose this function is also written outside main, and तो ये मैंने वेरिएबल डिक्लेयर किया है, x मैंने डिक्लेयर किया है, int x मैंने लिखा है, बट int x मैंने किधर लिखा है? ये डिस्प्ले फंक्शन के अंदर लिखा है. तो ओनली विद इन दैट डिस्प्ले फंक्शन दिस x you can use it anywhere. You cannot use it outside this function. So that is what called as your scope of the function. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Similarly, you have functions also. अभी सपोज मेरे पास एक फंक्शन है void display. void display मैंने main में लिखा है. एंड सपोज मेन के बाहर मैंने और एक फंक्शन लिखा है दैट इज void सपोज void output करके सपोज अनदर फंक्शन. सो सिंस डिस्प्ले इज रिटन इनसाइड द मेन, वो डिस्प्ले फंक्शन तुम लोग मेन में कहीं पे भी कॉल कर सकते हो बिकॉज इट इज नोन टू दैट मेन फंक्शन. इट इज इनसाइड द मेन, सो यू कैन कॉल इट एनीवेयर. सो लाइफ ऑफ दैट डिस्प्ले फंक्शन विल बी इनसाइड योर मेन फंक्शन. बट जो void आउटपुट फंक्शन है जो तुम लोग मेन फंक्शन के बाहर लिखोगे, उसका स्कोप मेन फंक्शन को नहीं रहेगा. यू कैनॉट कॉल इट इनसाइड द मेन देन. Are you getting? We will see when we will do the programs na, that time I will show you what do you mean by, I will again explain all these things. But for now you just understand the scope of the variable. Why? Because it is required for this concept. So what do you mean by this information hiding? अभी C language में क्या होता है? When you are writing main and inside the main what you are doing, you are declaring some variable. First step क्या रहता है तुम लोग का variable declaration? So suppose मैंने यहाँ पे लिखा int a and then I have declared another variable b also. Suppose I have declared int a and b. मतलब क्या है, ये int a and b मेन फंक्शन के अंदर जितना भी फंक्शंस रहेगा, जितना भी अदर वेरिएबल्स रहेगा, इट विल बी नोन टू एवरीवन. वो थ्रू आउट द मेन फंक्शन सबको पता चलेगा a b क्या है करके. यस और नो? जैसा मैंने अभी बोला, a and b will be accessible to you until and unless you are not closing your main function, right? So sometimes what happens, this a and b, when I have declared it, after that suppose I have just used a is equal to 5 and then I am not at all making use of this a or I am not at all making use of this b. a and b कहीं पे भी मैंने प्रोग्राम में यूज ही नहीं किया. तो क्या होगा, unnecessary the memory will be occupied for this variable and it will not be released though you have not used it. So what your object oriented program says, you should have this information hiding feature. What it does, it hides and protects the essential information from information of the class from the outside functions through a control interface. Means what it is doing, when you are declaring a particular class, for that class whatever the variables तुम लोग create, वो एक class के लिए, like class person के लिए, जैसा मैंने अभी दो variable declare किया है. Like one is that character a of 30, one character variable, and another one is int age. These two variables I have declared. So this variable will be accessible only within that class. It will not be accessible to any other function or any other class which is outside that class. Okay, so that is what called as information hiding. So I may have another class also. Suppose one class I have created of a person, another class I can create it of a student, another class I can create it as an employee. So in one program I can have any number of classes, but एक class में जो भी variables मैंने declare किया रहेगा, that will be used only for that particular class. It cannot be used for another class. Similarly, the variables which I have declared or the functions which I have declared for that employee class, that I cannot use for a person class or for a student class. Clear?
Ma'am, is commenting the same as information hiding?
Yes. Commenting?
Ma'am, we can comment a statement in C and C++, right?
No. That is, commenting is not like information hiding. Commenting is different. Commenting is, see, why you comment it? Because you don't want that particular part to be executed. It will, that comments will not follow your syntax and semantics of a program. This is just for your understanding. Commenting is not information hiding. Please don't think in that way. I didn't understand initially what you said. See, when you write a program, to understand what step you have written or एक particular sentence जब तुम लोग लिखते हो ना, तो just to understand what that statement means, for that particular purpose you may write a particular comment, or a particular statement, if you don't want that statement to be executed, then you make it as a comment. Then you make that particular statement as a comment. Comment means what? It is not part of the program. This is just for your understanding. But information hiding क्या बोल रहा है? ये what it says. मेरे क्लास में I can have certain variables which I don't wanted to share with someone else. Right? Like suppose I have created one class called as fy. I have created another class as sy. So fy में I have a specific subject which I will not share it with the sy का subjects, and sy class में whatever the subjects I have, that I will not share it with the fy subjects. Are you getting? So the subjects which
Yes,
are defined for FY will be known to all the FY students. That will not be known to SY students. And the subjects which are defined for SY students, that will be known only to SY students, and it will not. I will not give that information to the FY students.
Ma'am, we have OS lecture now.
Just a minute. What's the time?
12:32.
Sorry. Thank you for informing. Sorry, I forgot since. Okay, so we will stop here. In the next lecture, we will see we have some more features or some more concepts related to it. So we'll see that afterwards. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You can leave now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Bye,
you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Yeah. Bye.